Hey everyone, this is Carlos. I'm the founder and CEO at Product School. Today I'm here with Amir Movafaghi, who's the CEO at Mixpanel. Hey Amir.
Hello, how are you?
Good to have you here. You and I go way back. We've been doing a lot of cool things together. So for people who don't know, Mixpanel is one of the leaders in the product analytics space, and Amir is running the show. But before that, you have a really interesting background, especially for people in that work in tech, because you come from finance, right?
Yes, long time training in the finance world. I in 2010 moved to Twitter and effectively joined Twitter at a time where the company was small enough that your title didn't really mean anything. As long as you were there, you were solving problems and you'd solve whatever came your way. And that was really the first time things really opened up, and I was doing like 20% finance, 80% everything else, and that kind of morphed into me getting my hands on different functions, different problem sets across the organization, and that kind of paved the way to where I am now.
Well, you're very humble. You were a VP at Twitter, and now you're working as the CEO at Mixpanel. Before you were the CEO, I mean, Mixpanel has been around for a while. I was a user many years ago, even before I started Product School. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the story of the company and how you came on board?
Yeah, so Mixpanel now is a little over 10 years old, and actually knew Mixpanel from my Twitter days. We had to do a lot of what Mixpanel does now in-house, because at the time, pretty much the different problems of tracking the data, storing the data, analyzing the data were really three fundamental problems that there wasn't much of a solution in place, a defined solution in place back in 2010. So everyone in the market, from Twitter and LinkedIn, Facebook, all the companies that were scaling at that time were building all these things in-house. And it was very expensive, incredibly arduous, and you were spending a lot of, amazingly valuable developer time having to build things that weren't a competitive advantage, right? I really believed in ultimately, the decades or the years that ensued, you had an incredible amount of innovation and work that went into maturing the tracking, a lot of great options for where to store your data. But this problem of self-serve analytics, the problem of now that you've gone through this incredible amount of data engineering lift, you've cleaned up, you've stored your data, how do you actually get value out of it, right? How do you access it in a way where you can compose your questions and be able to learn from your data in a way that was meant to be? And that's been our problem at Mixpanel to solve, and something that we've really been chipping away at. And we've come to a place now where I'm really proud of, just the percentage of questions that we can now truly put at the hands of the end users. And something that is going to be a key focus for us, for years to come, and an incredibly powerful place for us to focus on.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day when companies had to build their own analytics infrastructure, because and that was the only way to go. And I'm glad to see that we've evolved so much, and now very few companies would consider that. There are so many really good options out there where you can just buy and integrate with your existing stack, so you can focus on adding value instead of reinventing the wheel. This whole category of product analytics is also kind of new, because back in the day, I remember analytics was for the data people or for the engineers. It was a very technical product. And now product managers, marketers, like basically non-engineers, can also use the product and focus on getting those insights.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% true, but I also say even for the engineers, right? Like, just because you know how to write SQL, or even if you're not an engineer and you know SQL, doesn't mean you want to go spend your day taking the most difficult path to getting the answers that should be a lot easier to get. And so regardless of whether you are or aren't technical, our role as a company is to just improve productivity and make it easier for anyone to be able to interact with this data in the most efficient and enjoyable path, right? And just it should be far easier for you to be able to get the answers you need to do your job in an effective way, and then be able to collaborate on that, share that, make decision on that data, right? Validate assumptions, come up with new hypotheses. Data has like almost, I guess maybe before we even like big data became a thing, right? After apps and mobile and cloud computing took off, a lot of the world was like, everyone was an analyst on spreadsheets, right? On Excel, you could pretty much do anything. And there was this sort of like relationship that when big data came into play, and you have essentially a vast majority of the most complex set of data is now this app engagement data, all of the user interaction data that's sitting on the app. And I think the relationship with data changed. People moved into this sort of like, okay, I need another person that's responsible for understanding this data, making sense of that data, and then you get into this like Q&A format, right? And whether you have an embedded analyst or a central data team, it makes it very hard for data to become an integral part of your day-to-day workflow when you are essentially dependent on this, like, I have to submit something, wait for an answer. Maybe it takes a week, maybe it takes a few weeks, maybe it takes a couple of days, but you're out of that flow, right? Whereas your mind is just trying to answer these set of questions that are sequenced, right? It's not just one question, it's like 20 questions that comes out of that first one. And so our work is essentially, how do we make that possible for you to be able to go get that type of relationship with your data that allows you to actually fold that into your day-to-day execution.
That's something that I see every day with product managers. I remember when we had to ask a question to a team, data engineering, and wait for them to give us the answer. It's almost like they were the gatekeepers of the information. Now we can log in, we can ask a simple question in simple terms, not even in SQL, as you said, and get the insights that we want. And I think making teams, empowering teams just to be more self-sufficient, to have access to data, is ultimately leading them to make better decisions, right? And move faster. So how are you thinking about the future of the industry in general? We're going from a place where now people have access to the information, but still they have to do certain heavy lifting to make sense of the data. So how can we make sure that those teams can also understand the tool and feel comfortable with it?
Yeah. I think for the most part, one of the greatest things that's happened in our ecosystem is there's been so much really smart, great entrepreneurs have been innovating in all different parts of the ecosystem. And I think a lot of the problems, or the new kind of set of data solutions that people are putting together, have honestly it's been a paradigm shift from back when you essentially had a limited options of what was on the table in terms of things that you could go stitch together from what was available to you in the marketplace, and you had to build a bunch of stuff in-house. Today, there's incredible options for the way in which you can set up your tracking, right? And there's amazing seed companies that are focused on the CDP space with Segment and Particle. You have incredible there's up and coming amazing companies on the infrastructure side, like RudderStack. So it's really exciting startup, and catering more to the data engineering and kind of focusing more offerings around the cloud data warehouse. And then honestly, the way Snowflake and BigQuery have evolved over the last few years, the cloud data warehouse is so much more powerful than it was just a few years ago. And you have these amazingly exciting tools like Census and that reverse ETL tools that are making it much more seamless for pulling the data out of the data warehouse. And then there's been obviously an insane amount of innovation just on data, transformation governance within the data warehouse. And I think what is essentially allowed for everyone is to really focus on what they're good at and not have to create these incredibly complex bundled solutions, or like building horizontally for because the temptation is Mixpanel is focused on self-serve analytics. And if we're dependent on A, B, C, and D, the fastest way is just go build it ourselves, right? But it takes a long time, it's distracting, and it's not our core value. And what we've really enjoyed has been just the amount of innovation and the way that our ecosystem has evolved. Is just more and more and more over the last few years. As a company, we've just been laser focused just on self-serve analytics, because now it's so much easier to have well-governed quality data coming into Mixpanel with the work that teams have already done in terms of cleaning up, putting data into the warehouse, and now just looking for self-serve UI to be able to go draw those insights. So I think that as a way that my view is this best of breed ecosystem that's going to build around the cloud data warehouse is just beginning. And we have an incredible decade of innovation that's going to come in with all of the things that are now possible to do with a clean, well-governed, and easy to extract data from BigQuery Snowflake.
That's a key strategic decision. I've seen companies growing horizontally and trying to become a platform and tackle every single use case, while I've seen others that focus on being the best at one particular thing, but also being very easy to integrate with others, so to give more flexibility to the teams to build their own stack. And it seems like you chose to focus on self-serve analytics and allow easy integrations.
Yeah, that's very much the, like I said, the decision, it just comes down to what is available, what's the best for customer, right? Like that's usually the best strategy you can pick, is what is the ideal configuration that you would recommend to a customer. And right now, I think what you can do with this modern data stack and these players that some of them I just mentioned is incredible. I mean, you can, really, for startups, like the stuff that Fivetran, DBT, Fishdown Analytics, you look at who's the fastest, biggest adoption of these tools. It's startups, because they don't have a baggage, right? They don't have a history of accumulated, debt. And so they see the solution like, oh my God, this is no brainer. I'm going to go implement A, B, and C, and I'm done. But for everyone else, it takes a little bit of kind of like, okay, we got to go through some change management. We got to rethink, the architecture, and it's a heavier lift. So naturally, there is a market for the bundled approach. And even though it's not ideal, there'll always be someone that just wants to say, how do I just go from a bundle to a bundle solution?
Totally. Like you won't see a startup today that goes for a one-stop shop solution. Even though it sounds great from the outside, the reality is that it gets you stuck so quickly that it doesn't scale. And yeah. I personally went through that pain, and I promised myself not to do it again.
Yeah.
So, Amir, what's your day-to-day like? Like, tell me a bit more about the status of the company when you joined, and the company today, and how you've changed as a leader.
Well, so I think my simple answer to the obviously a very, very broad question is, I think for the most part, as CEO of the company, you're setting a direction, right? You're setting a vision for the company in terms of where it's headed, and then your day-to-day is the how, right? And the how is in, what do you prioritize? How do you sequence the different problems that you want to take on now versus what you want to solve later? And then the second part of the how is in the culture of the company, right? How do people work together? What are the things you value? And I think the combination of those two things then helps you essentially keep marching toward the ultimate vision of the company. And surrounding all of that is your purpose, like, why are we doing this, right? Why are we headed in that direction? And why are we, prioritizing these things? And I think being very deliberate in communicating that why is really the job, and I've learned in my change. I guess the biggest change for me has been just the amount of appreciation of just the amount of the importance of that transparency, the effect of the communication. You're constantly making decisions and you're going through changes, and there's this huge value, incredible amount of value in just doing it transparently and communicating effectively through all that. And that's been probably the biggest area of how I've been able to observe, to take feedback, and just evolve as a leader.
So if I were the hat of your assistant or chief of staff, and I were to take a sneak peek at your calendar,
yeah,
how would you structure your week or month?
Yeah, so a good portion of my time is just meeting with my team, right? I definitely the ability to connect and make sure that as an executive team, we're on the same page. We know what problems we're trying to solve, what we're trying to prioritize. Like that is a huge part of how I spend my time. The second is just having enough space to be able to actually objectively look at inputs that are coming in either through observing data, right, understanding data points, both quantitative, right, through Mixpanel, but also qualitative through customer calls. We get NPS, qualitative feedback. I try to really study as much objective data as possible, so the inputs I have into my own decision making is very much the qualitative as well as the quantitative bits of what's happening in the business. And I look for validation, right? We have a bunch of hypotheses that we're taking into consideration as we evolve the product, as we evolve the go-to-market execution. And the thing that I want to create essentially is this objective loop on being able to understand whether we're doing the right things, and being able to get validation on that as soon as possible, so that we can course correct or continue to do more of what we're doing.
And I can imagine you drink your own champagne and you use Mixpanel at home.
it's look, but like the candors, we've gone through a lot of the same. We've intentionally want to feel the joys and the frustrations that our customers face. And we want to create this authentic inside out brand that essentially, I'm sure you see it, like most companies want to have a very extremely positive, like perfect view of themselves, right, unveiled to the rest of the world. I think for us, like, authenticity matters more, and so being able to actually really reflect who we are, I think shines through in the way that we're able to enable these things for our customers, because we're living them, right, and we're seeing those challenges, and we want to expose and open those up. So some of the things that we're actually starting to think about is how do we actually take a lot of these learnings and open it up as content to our audience. And that'll be another kind of sprinkle of just openness and sharing our own challenges of overcoming these problems over time.
That is huge. I resonate with what you said, because I went through that internal transformation, if you will. I had this misconception around, well, as a CEO, I have to know it all, and I have to wear this superhero cape. And when I was able to just be vulnerable, open up, and I say, I don't know this, and become more of a facilitator than just the person who's supposed to give all the answers, that opened up a lot of possibilities and empowered, the next generation of leaders. Because, like I always say for the team, that this is much bigger than ourselves. We're here for the long term, and it's important to also even involve the customers, as you said, so they are also part of this journey.
Totally. Partners, customers, employees, they're all they're all impacted.
On that note, I'm also very proud of our latest collaboration. Yes. We created the product analytics certification, and we made it free and available for everyone, which is something that makes me very proud. Yeah. Because now anyone from anywhere can learn more about analytics. And thank you for also providing so much credits for people to also be able to use your product for free.
Of course. Yeah, look, I mean, obviously our intent is to put the power of self-serve analytics for everyone, and we want to earn the ability, obviously, to have many of them over time become customers and help us grow. But in the end, the substance-driven part of this is just put the power of the knowledge in the hands of users, what we're capable of, what things we can solve together. And the collaboration has been amazing, because it's not just what the technology opens up, but the way to think about where do you start asking these questions. We've really enjoyed working with you and your team, Carlos. It's been amazing.
So, Amir, obviously we are all in education. I need to ask you this as a lifelong learner, like what are you excited about learning these days, and how do you carve out time for it?
Well, I when I'm not busy at Mixpanel, I've got 3 kids. I've got a 9-year-old daughter and a soon-to-be 5-year-old son and a soon-to-be 2-year-old son. So I've gotten quite passionate about actually education for them, and just kind of more broader, spent a bit more time getting myself familiar with our public school district here in Marin County where I live, and it's been I'm trying to, one of the things that I've really believed in is both kind of like a sense of responsibility to get more involved in our community and just participating proactively, and then also, just like I said, a huge area of passion for me in terms of, what is like the one thing that we could do to participate in, and if we could essentially help with more kids be independent thinkers, critical thinkers. I view that as such an incredibly powerful, impact on society, and I'm trying to kind of at a micro level do my part, to the extent that I can. So that's that's the area where I'm trying to learn more, educate myself, and just be more involved in at a local community level.
Me too. And for people, for older kids that are actually getting to the job market today, or even they are already there and they're curious about learning more about building products, what are some tactical things they can do right away in order to not get stuck?
Sorry, I missed that last part. In order to
do not get stuck. We get a lot of people who are like, I want to be a product manager. I want to be more data driven. But then they see this kind of too far away. How can they kind of get some quick win?
Yeah, I think, look, the biggest, this is like my general orientation of like where to get started. I think in a grand scheme of things, it's always helpful to start with the why. Like, what are you trying to do and why, right? And what is the ultimate effect you're trying to have in the thing that you're part of the application, or the part of the experience that you're tasked with, right? That you own. And I think my always like starting point is then you need to kind of form some idea, either validated through your observation or your intuition, that you think is going to create a better experience, right? And then the way to leverage data is either go craft those hypotheses or validate them, right? But if data is in neither part of, then you have no objectivity of whether you're making a difference, right? You're actually improving the user experience. You're actually improving that specific. You may own a little part of the journey. You may own a big part of the journey, but whatever it is, just be very intentional about what is the goal or outcome that you're trying to drive toward, and then use data as a way to objectively measure whether you really are making a difference. And the more simple, the better, right? People get stuck in creating these complex models, or trying to be very, very sophisticated, and sometimes it gets lost. The actual truth, the core foundational piece, gets lost. So the more you can simplify, the easier it is to explain to someone what you're trying to do and why, and how you're measuring that. Is always a good is always a good measure, right? If you can't explain it, or if the people you don't understand it, then it's go back to the drawing board and give it one more shot.
That's one of the things that gets me excited about these data visualization tools that really help me with the story. Because when you get so deep into data, everything makes sense, right? I'm sure you love your spreadsheets and they all look fantastic to you. But like, if we take that to a designer, they'll be like, what is this? And being able to apply design and design thinking principles to something as raw as data can really make a big difference.
Yeah, 100%.
So, well, this is everything that I wanted to discuss with you, but I always like to ask the final question, which is, what does the future like for Mixpanel?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Carlos, for us, one of the biggest things that we've focused on as a company has been how do we make the most complex data set and make it incredibly easy for anyone to go navigate it, learn from it, right, and weave it into their day-to-day workflow. The thing that we're now really focused on is how do we layer on, continue on that journey and make it, if it's from where it is now, from 10x to 100x better, right, in terms of comparison to what you were living with in BI, having to do all these things in SQL. On the second part, we're really taking advantage of the incredible innovation around us. And we're going to be making it much easier for you to essentially augment your product engagement data with your business data, right? So you're trying to understand your business's impact on monetization, the relationship between different parts of the data that's getting captured in your business applications and stored in your data warehouse. How do you much more seamlessly layer that into Mixpanel so you can unlock a whole new set of questions you can ask with ease, with data that's already been governed, cleaned up, and now you can essentially join and be able to really unlock the value of the product, not just for engagement data, but also the business data that you're capturing in other SaaS applications. So we're super excited. We've already started on that journey, but you'll see a lot of exciting stuff coming out in the next few months that will further deliver on that vision.